CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. This is an episode I've wanted to do for a while that we're finally putting together. We're going to meet with Mindy Ruggiero, and she's with East Coast Insights. She's done a bunch of stuff. She's been all around industry. She is a true data specialist when it comes to how the data can inform us on our journeys towards outcomes in manufacturing and myriad industry. We're going to get into all that stuff. But first of all, Mindy, welcome to CMMS Radio.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, this we have to give a quick shout out to Bob Latino.
Yes.
And for anybody who doesn't know who Bob is, that's Prelical Solutions. He is also the godfather of the HLM, which is high-level meeting, and that's a real thing. And he was kind enough to make an intro for us so that we could get talking. And then one day it was like, hey, do you want to do an episode of CMMS Radio? And you were like, well, okay. And here we are. So the first thing I always like to start off with, Mindy, is getting a little bit of background as to how you got into the industry in the first place. And you can go back as far as you want to, and then kind of bring us up to current date, you know, how you got into the space in the first place. I know you went to college and you're a chemical engineer and all these great things, but I'm going to let you handle that part of it.
Sure, Greg. So my training, like you said, is in engineering, and I've had stints at the flooring company Armstrong, as well as Honeywell and DuPont, and working mostly in roles like operations leadership, project management, and supply chain management. I recently started an independent consulting company called East Coast Insights, where I'm able to apply these experiences to help companies in a variety of industries.
Do you think that through both the educational experience and each of the different stints, if you will, you got to see and experience a lot of different, I'm going to say, both what right looks like and also what wrong looks like, that helped you become kind of a master or quasi master of how the work and the data are actually partnered up to deliver these outcomes that we want in production and safety and whatnot?
Absolutely. You know, I didn't even know what engineering was when I got into college, and my professor in our first class described that all man-made things are an engineer has touched as well as has been manufactured. And it kind of sparked a curiosity in me to learn how things are made, as well as be part of the manufacturing industry as an engineer. And at Honeywell was my first real experience with interacting with maintenance. To be fully transparent, I have never had a maintenance role or reliability, but in operations, I'm living the reality of the outcome of maintenance and reliability. So, the defining moment for me was getting promoted into a leadership role in my operating area, and having that responsibility rest on my shoulders. You know, I owned the equipment. I was accountable for operating it correctly and reporting any concerns on it. So when I first started in that role, I had plenty of experience with 60 plus hours a week, nights, weekends, that type of thing. And I knew that I needed to be proactive when it came to my area. So, the single most thing that I felt was important to do was to dive into the downtime and quality data for my area over the past several years, to really understand what's been eating our lunch, and just see, did we fix it or not? And I found out where the main issues were, and what was causing a lot of off grade, what was causing downtime, and to develop some programs that operations could do that would, assist with maintenance. And, I found some issues that were fixed. And I also found some issues that were just waiting for the next season to bite us again, which
Mm.
was, it's nice to be able to find those low hanging fruit that are going to get you next winter when the freeze comes, and you know took care of it because of the data, the story that was in the data.
Yeah. That so in those experiences, because as you're telling the story, I'm just imagining, and I always want to come in with, oh, how does the CMMS fit into this? But for you to do that, also from an operations perspective, is really important because recently I've been in some really cool conversations and meetings, even on sites, where there's this concept of operations and operators being more plugged in with maintenance and figuring out who can do what for those mutually beneficial outcomes. So it sounds like you've seen that in action. So I want to ask a little bit about that, like how those relationships get built and maintained, like on the plant floor, for the mutual learning rather than, hey, that's not my job. And then I also want to ask how user adoption and data in the CMMS can inform the storyline that you leverage to get those outcomes.
Sure. So, as far as engagement with operations and maintenance, I think that it's the the best thing that has served me is as an engineer. I've seen a lot of engineers come in with a chip on their shoulder, and they don't feel like anyone can, in an operator or maintenance craftsman role, that can teach them anything. But they're the heart of the operation, and it's so important that when you're trying to solve a problem, that you go ask someone, a senior operator, a trainer, the maintenance craftsman, for their input, so they're bought into whatever solution it is. And that just over time builds trust and leads to more engagement. So yeah, I mean, that's the main thing, is just talking to people and building relationships, and including them, because honestly, maybe the first idea that I have is completely off base, and what I learn from them is what ends up solving the problem. Um, so as far as CMMS data and using that as a tool, I mean, it's got everything from a maintenance and asset perspective. So, you have to use it. That's where the data comes from. Looking at maintenance work orders, I in operations as well as project management, I was looking at maintenance work orders, to justify future capital projects, as well as to figure out what the most problematic equipment was. So the conversations with the operators and craftsmen, sometimes, most of the time, they know exactly what the issue is, and they just aren't listened to. And then after speaking with them, go back to the data, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to verify and validate what they said through data.
And this is why I think a lot of us throughout the industry talk about these concepts of the technology, like a CMMS or something similar, is not there to babysit people. It's there to collect and gather information about the real story, about what happened, when, why, or some clues so we can figure out why. I want to ask about, you mentioned the project management part of it. And I know you've probably done a countless number of projects that you had to um, deal with, from inception or incubation of an idea to building out what that project's going to look like, to launching the project, to managing the project, to delivering and executing the project, and then getting it done. I think I'm always wondering from someone like you, does the CMMS play a critical role in projects that have to do with, let's say, you have a new project and you're going to replace an entire line. Say there's an entire line that, all right, we're at a point now, we know we've got to replace this. Does the CMMS play a role in how that project unfolds when you're building it? And if so, how?
Absolutely. Like I mentioned, when you're in the inception phase and trying to justify to leadership that the project is worth doing, that type of data tells you how much cost, how much downtime, how much quality issues have been incurred due to that piece of equipment failing. Um, as far as getting into the execution of the project, I often interface with folks um, that were CMMS experts to make sure that the project, all of the parts that were required, spare parts, entering the asset information into the CMMS, that is totally critical. That sets the equipment up for success for its lifespan.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, because I made a few notes. Usually I do like a grip it and rip it style, but I like to make a few notes just to kind of keep me accountable for some of the things I thought would be interesting. When it comes to being in a male dominated environment industry, there's I got a little bit of insight as to your ability to navigate that and thrive in that. And I want to just ask point blank, what do you think is the approach or the secret, or what makes that possible for you, that someone listening to this, even one gal out there could hear something that kind of lets her know, not only is this possible, but this is how it went for me to be able to thrive in a male dominated environment.
Sure. To be completely honest, I have had just a phenomenal experience with everyone that I've worked with in manufacturing. Sure, there's been some, guys with rough edges that have, you kind of have to have tough skin whether you're a guy or a girl in manufacturing, period. So I would say that up front. Um, don't have rose colored glasses going in because it's a tough industry. But to be honest, I feel that I actually may have an advantage over my male counterparts in the form that of some of the job opportunities, as well as the fact that I just work really well with my male coworkers and colleagues, and perhaps that's because I'm a girl and they want to do things for me that help me in my career. I don't know, but being in a male dominated industry has not hindered my career at all. I've gotten countless opportunities, and I've never really run up against someone who didn't want to share information. And I think whether you're a guy or a girl, the best thing to do is just go in with curiosity and just ask questions and be show enthusiasm for learning what they know, and you'll go far, because people want to share what they know, especially when you're asking them because you don't know. And yeah, I've had nothing but good experiences as far as being a woman in industry.
Well, I think, and I think we all hear stories. We sometimes see things. I've made dumb jokes that probably shouldn't be made in when there's gals in the room. And I think what I've seen so far, kind of looking back, is the majority of the time it's not about whether you're male or female. It really is about you know, are you eager and curious about the learning and the sharing of, how you've solutioned something, how you've solved a problem? Uh, it's actually a lot of fun, like when you're at conferences, when you have the conversations that aren't on the conference floor, but maybe later on, where you hear these stories from guys and gals talking about just the scenario. We were at this plant, we were out here doing that, and they're just talking constantly about solutions. And there's some fun stuff. And usually, what I've found also is a lot of the guys in maintenance, in manufacturing, in different parts of the industry, they're kind of like keeping an eye on things. Like they kind of want to make sure nobody's getting out of line. And then at the same time, a lot of the gals that I've had the pleasure of knowing over these last few years, at least through the podcast and even prior to that, um, it's just not a male female thing. So I wanted someone to kind of hear from you what that experience is like. And I'm a fan of it. I think there's different thought processes and abilities that a woman brings to the game when it comes to collaborating and maybe, I don't want to say multitasking because that's such a misnomer, but maybe compartmentalizing, what's happening here versus what's happening there. Maybe that's a better way to put it. So I just think it's a fascinating topic, and it's a thing, but it's also not a thing, right? So I want to be careful that it's not like about virtue signaling and all that. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've had because I'm in a male dominated industry, I've had so many male um, mentors, and they're very dear to me that they would take me under their wing and teach me what they know. And so, um, yeah, I've just had amazing experiences in manufacturing. I've just taken the stance working with these rough edge guys in, operators, craftsmen, engineers, that words are really not, you can't really take offense to that. I mean, if they touch you, that's a different thing. But
Oh,
if
yeah.
if it's just a joke, like, just, let it slide, or just talk to them personally. HR doesn't need to get involved. Like, it's you know
Yeah. Yeah. And it
and we just
obviously,
want to be, in my opinion, I just want to be one of the guys. So I don't want it to be any different. I want to be treated just like any of my other colleagues,
yeah.
not
I
any
mean,
kind of special treatment.
we're all supposed to be on the same team, and we're all, doing something to, keep moving the ball forward. And everybody's got their role. Everybody makes a contribution. Everybody looks out for everybody on their left, on their right, in front of them, behind them, all that kind of stuff. And that's what really matters at the end. All the other stuff is um, not. That's why I say it's kind of a thing, but not really a thing. It's like, let's not make it more than what it is. We just all want to get somewhere, and I just want to make sure we spent a little time on that during this episode. I want to ask a different question that has more to do with maintenance and operations. When it comes to operational visibility, have you ever seen or even experienced yourself where operations tends to misunderstand the role of maintenance? I'm not talking necessarily about you, but where you see this in some of the organizations where you've either worked or where you've consulted and you come in to help. Do you see that as still a problem where, from an operations perspective, there's less value placed on maintenance teams, and maintenance activities?
Yes, I think that there is an adversarial type relationship between operations and maintenance that is completely unnecessary. They should really be hand in hand in coming up with the solutions. Who does the data analysis and prioritizing doesn't really matter, in my opinion. I think that you're missing the boat if you don't have a data engineer that knows how to pull all the data. If you don't have a data analyst that is analyzing all of your data and presenting it. And, the operations and maintenance team should be hand in hand, making these priorities and managing their staff and their work orders and their capital projects based on those most impactful opportunities. It's unfortunate when I see it that an equipment fails and there's quick to point a finger at maintenance, and maybe it's because operations made a mistake. So it's kind of it's hard to figure out what the reason for that is, but I guess because when you're proactive and you prevent something from happening, it's not seen, it's invisible. And so there's no accolades for that. But if you shut down the plant and, point fingers and try to deflect, then maybe that gets the heat off of you. And then you run around with a cape, starting the process back up and get accolades. So,
Yeah.
the whole system is kind of built against being proactive.
Really interesting, because as you're describing it, I'm imagining it, and then I'm thinking of all these different conversations I've had with individuals just like you that have this type of experience, seeing it unfold, and this idea of the blame game. And what is that really about? Well, it probably boils down to the fact that we're all human beings, and we I mean, we get we get hurt, we're scared, we're worried about how we're going to look when things come up like that, right? And then there's this idea, well, just be accountable. Okay, sure. Well, how do I do that? Because I am worried that I'm going to be looking bad, or I'm going to potentially lose my job, or have to maybe even pay for something that I screwed up. And that gets back to culture. And I want to then switch it into, have you been in scenarios where you've witnessed and experienced a culture go from a culture of blame and, people throwing on the cape and playing hero, to a culture of kind of fundamental excellence where people can speak plainly, but they're not playing the blame game. They're playing the, hey, well, we need to know how it happened, but first let's get to fixing it, and then let's go figure out how to prevent it from happening, rather than Jill did it, John did it. Have you seen that unfold from kind of like not so great to becoming great? Have you done that? Can you share a story?
Honestly, I have experienced excellence and then its decline.
Ooh, tell me about
Unfortunately, I
that.
have not seen the opposite happen, and that's kind of one of my passions, is to support and be a part of American manufacturing success, because that has to turn around that whole mindset of blaming versus taking accountability, and just the whole system being, you know, built more towards firefighting than proactive measures. So, my whole what motivates me is seeing American manufacturing come back to its full force, because these plants that I've been in are shells of what they once were. And, a lot of that has to do with automation, which, I'm all for innovation, but a lot of it is because, we're not productive, and it's cheaper to do the same thing overseas. And so, equipment health is the micro indicator of the whole organization and health and culture health. So, if you, in my opinion, if you have a well-run maintenance and reliability program, then that is going to kind of have a ripple effect into the rest of the organization, because it helps with If your equipment's not failing and your people aren't having to come in on the weekends, they're going to be happier. You're going to retain your people. You're going to not have people in pointless meetings to firefight the issue of the day. You're going to have them working on long-term strategy and actual reliability versus, repair maintenance constantly. You know, I I really wish to see the turnaround from the blame game and the firefighting to a well-oiled machine, but I've only seen the opposite, unfortunately.
Yeah. That can you think of any like one more common thing that caused those kind of excellent teams to devolve? Like any of the more common things, like maybe leadership changes or some other kind of a thing that's the more common one that can unravel a team and an organization that's moving with that kind of excellence?
Yes, definitely. When I first started in industry, Six Sigma, lean manufacturing was a big thing. And all of my companies had some sort of green belt or lean manufacturing training. They were actively doing Kaizen events and, engaging everyone on different like big problems. And it just faded away like a fad. And I understand that some pieces of those programs are not useful for everyone, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's some great practices in those principles, and you know we need to get out of the fad of whoever comes up with this like great program, go with it for like 5 years and then throw it out. And you nailed it when you said that executives come in and they want to make a mark and change something. If it's working, don't mess with it.
Thank you. Thank you. Because I gripe about it. I wanted to use a different word there. I gripe about it quite often. And I don't think that's as helpful as it would be to come up with kind of a solution for that. But then that feels like a bunch of chirping that's so noisy that it gets ignored. But I think when executive leaders come in, or even mid-level leaders, we so wish that they could take a beat, see what's really there, go see, get down on the plant floor, talk to the teams before you're going to make these changes. And if somebody's, running a lean program, find out how effective it is, or find out what's changed and see if you can get it back on track before you start ripping things out, unpacking the boxes, repacking and restacking so you're looking good. We get it, but it's one of those things I have a real tough time personally. Like, it shouldn't be personal, right? It should be business, but it's like, quit sleeping on what you already have, as opposed to, right? You don't just get a new roof. You got to go check and see what's going on with the roof, check its integrity. Maybe you just need to replace a couple of shingles. I mean, that's a silly analogy, but I think we just got to keep talking about it because we hope it makes an impact for, like one potential manager, supervisor, leader, even the C-suite. I have recently changed a little bit on the C-suite only because they can't possibly know everything, but I do think it'd be nice if leaders didn't parachute in and just start, doing what they do, as opposed to, okay, what did I get here? What did I have? What's working? What's not? Why is that not working? Do we actually have that? We just stopped doing it. Those are the things that they say they do, but what they're really doing is looking for opportunities to make an immediate impact, and they're not going to play the long game. I've got 2 years to make a big difference at this company and get that huge bonus or secure my golden parachute and all that. And am I calling them out hard? Sure. So what? I mean, what are you going to do? I'm not in that game anymore. So I don't
Exactly.
care.
Yeah. I mean, another thing to your question is, the downfall seems to come from losing the knowledge through retirements,
Oh,
and it's just knowledge that you can't get back. So, how robust are your processes that they're just relying on one person's knowledge? What are your succession plans? And that often just is not on anyone's radar. They might say it is, but it's not. And are the succession plans based on skill and experience, or is it just political?
so interesting, because when I think about this, having been involved in some organizations where I was part of actual leadership, and some of the things that would disrupt our process usually came down to, yes, we need to do that, but we have all of this that has to happen every single day. And if I'm not involved in those 3 or 12 or whatever things, there's going to be disruption and pain, and things could really get bad. But we're not maintaining our documentation. We're not maintaining what we put in place to maintain our stuff, right? You don't have any kind of cadence where you actually stop for that one day and go assess an entire CMMS platform. Everybody's like, Greg, you can't do that in a day. And I'm like, if you do all the things and you start to do it in a proactive way, yes, you can, in some way, shape, or form. And if you're that big, then it's not going to be one person doing it. It's going to be 3, or it's going to be 12. It just depends on the size of the organization dedicating those resources. So now I'm about to spin out and talk about, balance sheets and CFOs, and like, oh, that costs $182,000 per year. Why are we spending $182,000 on that? I don't like it. We're going to change it. Didn't even go and figure out why, right? Or whatever. These are the funnest things for me to talk about, because nobody wants to really talk about them. And I think it matters. And there's plenty out there that'd be like, Greg, just grow up. You just got to do this stuff. We're out here to make money so you can get home and pay your bills. It's like, yeah, I get it, but let's keep everything running well. So
Exactly.
I want to switch you into, because we've covered a lot, whether you realize it or not, we've actually covered a lot. And I want to switch you into the fun question segment that we typically want first timers on CMMS Radio to suffer through, if you will. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. No wrong answers on any of this stuff. Just some fun questions. Fun question number 1. What is your favorite music?
Favorite music, jam bands.
All right. I like it. Have you ever heard of a jam band called Chicken Foot?
Not.
All right. You're going to have to check that out later. That's
Chicken Foot.
That's the Red Rocker and his crew. Chicken Foot.
What era is that? Present day?
No, not even close. I'm talking about Sammy Hagar and 3 of his buddies that have what some would say is the best jam band on the planet. And I think Sammy Hagar is 70 something. Yeah. So
I'll check it out.
Yeah, you mentioned jam band, and then I'm thinking of them, and I'm thinking of some of my friends that are like, "Oh man, I can't believe you saw that," and I'm like, "Yeah, I had to go look it up," when they're talking about it. All right, so there you've got something to go check out and see who Chickenfoot is. Next fun question: what is your favorite sport or hobby? And on sport, it doesn't have to be one that you currently play; it could be one you like to root for, kind of support.
I really like football. I cheered in middle school and high school, so I have a really good understanding of the rules. And so I love watching football, and I love gymnastics. My 3 daughters participate in gymnastics, which you could say I'm living vicariously through them, because I wasn't able to do the same, but they love it so much, and it's great exercise for them. And I just love watching the greats like Simone Biles do her thing. I mean, she's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's awesome. I haven't heard that one before on here, I don't think. So really cool to learn something new like that. All right, here's the big one. No wrong answers. What is your philosophy, perspective, anything at all when it comes to this concept of work-life balance?
That's a great question. I am somewhat of a workaholic, and because what I do is not just what I do during the day, it's really who I am and how I think. I'm just curious. I love looking at data and love solving problems. So work-life balance has been very difficult for me to navigate. And especially over COVID, when we were sent home to work at home, I lost the boundary of what is work hours and what are home hours. So I'm kind of trying to get back into that. But I just think that it's really important to remember that the company will go on without you, and that nothing is that serious. And that your family is really the ones that you really need to focus on. The kids, just they grow up so fast. I already have an almost 11-year-old, 8 and 6-year-old, and they're just growing so fast. And I know before I know it, they'll be gone. And so I just encourage everyone to really just keep that in perspective, while also, doing their best and putting their all into their work. But, go home and be with your family.
Yeah, I love it. That's why I say there's no wrong answers. It's kind of a good one to wrestle with, and sometimes it freezes you in your tracks. And I appreciate not only you sharing that, but all the great time we spent here for your first appearance on CMMS Radio. And I would encourage everybody to reach out to you. They can find you on LinkedIn, and I did already mention, but I'll mention it again, East Coast Insights. That's your consulting firm if anybody needs help with their data and all these other great things that we talked about. So Mindy, thank you for being here with me on CMMS Radio.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
You got it. Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.